Somalia, a land on the Horn of Africa, possesses a unique and often harsh beauty. At the heart of Somalia's economy lies agriculture, dominated by vast herds of livestock. Livestock are the lifeblood of the Somali people. They provide food and a crucial source of income. This reliance on livestock has shaped the Somali way of life. Animals are a symbol of wealth and status. Somalia's agricultural landscape, though dominated by livestock, is not monolithic. Within this predominantly pastoral society, there exists a diverse tapestry of agricultural practices, each adapted to the specific ecological and economic conditions of different regions. These practices can be broadly categorized into three main subsectors: nomadic pastoralism, traditional farming, and market-oriented farming.
Nomadic pastoralism, the most prevalent form of agriculture, involves the seasonal movement of communities and their herds in search of grazing land and water. This ancient practice, deeply ingrained in Somali culture, allows for the sustainable utilization of scarce resources. Nomadic pastoralists possess an intimate knowledge of the land, understanding the subtle variations in vegetation and water availability.
Traditional farming, practiced in areas with more reliable rainfall, focuses on the cultivation of staple crops such as sorghum, maize, and beans. These crops, often grown alongside small vegetable gardens, provide subsistence for families and community. Traditional farming methods are often labor-intensive, relying on manual tools and techniques passed down through generations.
Market-oriented farming, a relatively recent development, is concentrated in areas with better access to irrigation and markets. This type of farming focuses on the production of cash crops such as bananas, mangoes, and vegetables, primarily for urban centers and export.
These three subsectors, though distinct, are interconnected and interdependent. This interconnectedness highlights the complexity of Somalia's agricultural system and the need for holistic approaches to development. The legacy of Somalia's tumultuous past casts a long shadow over its present. The reign of Mohammed Siad Barre, who seized power in 1969, ushered in an era of authoritarian rule and socialist economic policies that profoundly impacted the country's trajectory, particularly in the agricultural sector. Barre's vision for Somalia centered on modernization and self-sufficiency, but his methods, often brutal and misguided, ultimately proved disastrous.
One of Barre's most significant economic interventions was the nationalization of land and industries, including agricultural processing plants and export companies. This move, intended to wrest control from traditional elites and empower the state, had the unintended consequence of disrupting established market networks and disincentivizing private investment. Farmers and herders, accustomed to traditional systems of land tenure and trade, found themselves at the mercy of an often corrupt and inefficient bureaucracy.
The Barre regime also embarked on ambitious irrigation projects, aiming to increase agricultural productivity and reduce reliance on rain-fed agriculture. While some of these projects, such as the construction of dams and canals, initially showed promise, they were often poorly planned and managed. Environmental degradation, including soil salinity and waterlogging, became a significant problem in some areas. The collapse of the central government, coupled with the proliferation of armed groups, led to widespread violence, displacement, and the destruction of infrastructure. Somalia's agricultural sector, already grappling with the legacy of past policies, faces a double burden of challenges in the 21st century: protracted conflict and the growing impacts of climate change. These interconnected threats have created a perfect storm, pushing the country's fragile food systems to the brink. The ongoing conflict, though fragmented and localized in some areas, continues to disrupt livelihoods, displace communities, and hinder development efforts.
Farmers and herders, caught in the crossfire, often find it impossible to tend to their crops or move their livestock freely. Markets are disrupted, infrastructure is destroyed, and access to essential services is severely limited. The protracted nature of the conflict has eroded resilience, leaving communities vulnerable to even minor shocks.
Climate change, meanwhile, is exacerbating existing vulnerabilities. Somalia is highly susceptible to extreme weather events such as droughts and floods, which are becoming more frequent and intense due to climate change. These events have devastating impacts on agriculture, decimating crops and livestock and pushing communities into destitution. Addressing these challenges requires a multi-pronged approach that prioritizes peacebuilding, climate change adaptation, and investment in resilient food systems.